Welcome to Conversations. I want to tell you how I met this guest because I think it's kind of fun. My friend Brant and I were down at the Butterfly Herbs having coffee, as we do, and people come by, sometimes my friends, sometimes his friends, and a lady came by who seemed kind of perky, fun, interesting. We asked her to sit down with us. She was a good friend of Brant's, and turned out she was a midwife, and she's going to be on the show today. Never in my wildest dreams would I think I'd be a gay guy on a TV show interviewing a midwife about issues like that, but here we are. Yeah. So I'd like you to meet, oh goodness, my Sharon Delaney. The mind goes after, you know, Sharon Delaney. Okay. Sharon, a little biographical work on you. Mm-hmm. Are you a native Montanan?
No, I've been here 15 years.
That's good enough.
It's longer than I've ever lived anywhere.
You have kids?
I have two.
Two.
14 and 15. A boy, 14-year-old boy, 15-year-old girl.
In fact, if we cut this, it seems like we cut this short, she's got to get to a football game.
Right.
So we're kind of under pressure. Where did you get your education?
I got my nursing degree at Duke, and then I went on and got a master's at North Carolina, University of North Carolina. And then I went on again and got a degree at Frontier School of Nurse Midwifery, and that's where I got the nurse midwife training.
This obviously is not something that one goes into lightly for a nurse to make that change or transition. What was it that motivated you to go in that direction?
Well, I don't know what motivated me. I guess as long as I've been conscious, I've known I wanted to be a nurse midwife. And I don't know how I knew that because I didn't even really know what they were. But since I was a little kid, that's what I wanted to be. And I gave up on it. I thought when I lived in Montana and there weren't any programs, I figured, well, there goes that dream. I'll just do something else. So I taught maternal newborn nursing for 14 years and practiced in the hospital. And then distance education opened up. And I was able to do this program through a computer and traveling and going to Butte for my clinicals. So times changed, and that's what helped me.
About the only thing I know about midwives is they attend at the birth of babies.
Right.
I'm sure there's much more than that. Let's suppose I were heterosexual, got married, we were expecting, somebody mentioned a midwife to us, the possibility of doing that, and we called you, or called someone like you. What would you give us? How would you explain what you do? What are the advantages of going with you as opposed to our family doctor?
I think one of the advantages is that I'm a nurse, and so I have a nursing perspective, which means real focused on families, on building a family and not just delivering a baby, on helping you to become a father, helping the woman become a mother through teaching and support and a lot of counseling. As pregnancy goes on and new issues start coming up, we talk about those. And I encourage both the parents to be present at every visit, not just the mom and the kids if there are children, other children. So that's the big thing for me, is looking at it as building a family. And we're having a birth at the time to do that, but it's not just all about delivering a baby and monitoring the pregnancy. And I mean, that's all inherent, but there's more to it.
So you're looking at a much bigger perspective than just the biological event.
Exactly.
And as important as that may be.
Yeah, and then I really believe in being there for support throughout the labor, not just coming in to deliver the baby, but being there and offering whatever the mother wants. If she wants a non-medicated birth, if she wants a medicated birth, you know, I can provide either of those, but the support has to be there, the whole structure underneath. That's a big piece of what I do.
That sounds like something that would be very beneficial. I don't know. You know, I'm a new father. Can I have my baby at home?
Yes.
I can?
Yes. There are two choices when you choose to use a midwife. You can use a home birth midwife. There's lots of different names for them: direct entry, lay midwife, licensed midwife. In this town, they provide home births, and there's several women here that do that. So if you wanted to do the home birth route, you would go through a licensed midwife. If you wanted to have a hospital-based birth, then you would go through a nurse midwife. I think in a lot of ways our philosophies are similar. At least from my own point of view, I try to offer the most home-like birth I can within the hospital. So there's whatever, a safety net of the hospital, the security, the cleanup, which some people, that's one reason people have a baby at the hospital.
So we had our hearts set on having the baby at home.
Mm-hmm.
But my doctor says, our doctor says, might be a little troublesome.
Mm-hmm.
I think you should, you know, be a little closer to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
So then do we go with you because you're a nurse midwife,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to, you said a home midwife?
A licensed midwife.
Licensed
yeah.
midwife,
Mm-hmm.
okay. So we're at, we've agreed we're going to go the hospital way.
Right.
How do you work with our family doctor? How do you relate? I mean,
Right. I have a specific physician that's my backup doctor, and he is the one that if I have questions or if I need to consult on something, I talk to him directly. If you were seeing a family doctor and then you chose to come to me, then I would assume your care and would be the one that would do the birth with you. If I had problems, I would speak directly to my physician because he's an obstetrician. It's his specialty area, and he's the one I'm most comfortable and familiar with.
so even if we had a family doctor, we'd probably be dealing with an obstetrician,
Right.
a new doctor.
Right, for the pregnancy. But then you would return, your family doctor would become your baby's doctor, and you would go,
That's what I'm
yeah. So you would
clarifying for
return.
myself.
Yeah.
We have our family doctor. He refers to an obstetrician anyway.
Not necessarily. A lot of
Oh.
family doctors do
Oh, okay.
birthings. So in this town, you know, most of them do. So if you wanted to have a birth with a family doc, you could do that. If you wanted to have a midwife birth, you can have a lay midwife or a nurse midwife. There's so many choices now. It's different than it used to be.
Can my doctor work with you? Can my doctor work with you?
We don't have any kind of formal arrangement, but they sure could. I mean, they could call.
Although you're
No,
used
we
to
don't.
working with a particular doctor, and
It's just the way the state has it set up, the licensing board has it set, that I have a specific doctor that I have to identify as being my backup physician. And so that's why it would be that way.
could we go back just a little bit to the home births?
Mhm.
Suppose I'm married to a woman as healthy as a horse, and we're sure that she could handle it at home. You would refer us to a different midwife,
Mhm.
and how would she be handling that? Does she have her doctor as well?
It's hard to speak for them because, you know, I don't know what all their arrangements are specifically, so it'd be best to talk directly to one of them. But my understanding is that they have informal relationships with physicians in town, and they can say, like say, and this happens sometimes, there's a midwife taking care of somebody and some minor complication develops. That midwife may say, why don't you go find an obstetrician that you feel comfortable with and go basically get a referral and a second opinion and find out where you're at with that. And they often still have a home birth.
And I assume that ambulances or whatever are alerted, and that there is a backup plan of some sort in case
That's
there
my
is
understanding, is there's
a problem.
that when you decide to have a home birth, then your midwife and you talk about who's gonna help you out if you need help. What's your route of entry to the hospital if you need it?
I'm sure I shouldn't ask you this on such short notice, but do you have any statistics? I mean, this is a safe process, the home birth.
If the main thing with home birth is screening, and if you screen a woman and make sure that there aren't problems that could interfere with a safe birth, then statistically the research is showing that it can be a safe process.
Okay.
I could probably get in trouble for saying it.
Okay.
Politically. No, I'm kidding.
Well, I'm going to lead
But
you.
it is.
I'm going to lead you into even more trouble and talk about doctors.
Uh-huh. Oh, boy.
Why is it that a number of women want to be midwives and a lot of couples choose midwives? Isn't your doctor good enough? See, I've led you into trouble right there.
That's okay. It's not a matter of whether the doctor is good enough, but a woman needs to have choices in who she feels most comfortable with. I have a lot of women that come to me when they get pregnant who have seen a physician for years, but when it comes time to having their baby, they want to have the midwife care. They want to have that one-on-one. I don't have nearly as many patients as a physician has, so I get to know my families. The doc that I work with is extremely understanding about the need for us to establish that relationship. So I have another partner. Brenda's my nurse midwife partner. We work together, and we take all the time in the world with our families. When they come in for their first visit, we usually spend an hour and a half with them. There's never been anybody pushing the clock saying, you've got to be working faster, you've got to see these patients quicker. And I think that's the key to a successful practice, is having a relationship with a physician that understands that and says, you guys provide this care that's so caring, so loving.
Sharon, I brought it up on this show before. I'm an alcoholic, and I fell off the wagon just recently and spent 4 days in the hospital. Now, my doctor, my personal doctor, came in, saw me, I think, 2 mornings, and then he took the weekend off, told me he was going to leave me with another doctor, and it turned out that the doctor I got wasn't the doctor he told me he was going to leave me with. The point I'm getting is that the nurses were incredible. I mean, they were right there. They were diagnosing problems that my doctor didn't even care about. They were caring for my comfort, and I was just so impressed. And I think what you're trying to say is that a midwife gives that kind of special care, and that there's nothing wrong with the doctor. He's often just too busy, or sees it from a different angle, and you provide that really close attention that a lot of people find important.
Well, I think that's really true, and having taught nursing school for years, it's really dear to my heart that nurses are caring people. By and large, that's what they do. They care, they provide what you need, taking care of you.
Yes, just being taken care of.
Yeah. I just don't think you can get that if you don't have the whole system. The physicians provide the care that you need, the medical care. They make sure that you're getting that aspect, but without the nurses, it would all fall apart. So you need the doctors and the nurses. And my personal feeling is nurses provide what we need when we're not feeling well, or when we're scared, or when we're sick, or having a baby.
Yeah, or having a baby.
Yeah. I couldn't do it without the nurses.
I want to lead you into a more theoretical area, I guess, and that is, since we've talked about being on the show, I've thought of ways I could tie it into some of my interests. And there's been a lot of research recently as gay people go back and look at their history, and theoretically, and these things are hard to reconstruct, but one thing that happened in the early part of the 19th century was that as a medical profession sort of coalesced and set standards and practices and decided what they could handle and what they couldn't handle. One of the things that they did was to decide, and this is an oversimplification, but was to decide that homosexuality was a disease and that they could deal with it, maybe cure it, maybe not cure it, but that it was a disease and it came in their territory. And there are a lot of gay theorists who say that what used to be a behavior, something that people did, that maybe a heterosexual or someone who identified as a husband and father of children, Oscar Wilde was married and had children, went out and did this as a behavior on the side, but that the doctors, by saying that it was a disease, turned it into a category, which caused all kinds of problems.
Right.
Now, That's as far as I'm going to go with that little bit of history. But it seemed to me, as I was thinking about it, is that from time immemorial, there have been women caring for other women who
Right.
have children. And that the medical profession, in order to establish its credentials and whatever, did somewhat the same thing with birth, that it said,
Absolutely.
we are the people who are going to take over the women when they give birth, and that probably caused as many problems as the gay thing.
Well, and truly, around the turn of the last century, I guess. We're in a
Yeah.
new century.
Turn the last century.
Yeah, right around 1900. Forceps became vogue. Are you familiar with forceps to pull
Yeah.
a baby out? And the obstetricians then had their little medical trick that they could use to help deliver a baby. And so instead of having home birth with midwives, they then would medicalize the birth, and it became a procedure to be done, delivering a baby. And that was really a turning point in our history, in midwifery history. Was once that happened, then the physicians were to be called in, and then the next step, of course, was for the physicians not to make home visits, but for women to have to go to the hospital. And it became a medical event. Next thing, we had scopolamine, the knock-you-out drug, which was used, and women were unconscious for their births, put in these beds with bars because they would be so unmanageable from the drugging. And they put helmets on their heads, and that's how you had your baby. And it was pulled out of you because you were unconscious and unable to do this.
Kind of makes me glad to be gay. I wouldn't want my partner going through all of that.
Well, you know what's really interesting about all that is it was a consumer movement. We look at it and feel outraged that this was done to women, but in reality, this was demanded by women in this country. They were using this drug in France, and in Europe, and women over here were outraged that they had to have pain through labor, and they demanded this. It became a big movement, and that's one way that we had that development. So I can be outraged at what happened to women, but I also understand that the consumer movement was part of all that.
Well, and I would imagine with
misunderstand.
the doctors taking on this new status, that there was a certain amount of class involved.
Oh,
that,
definitely. Midwives were not
we
high
can
class.
afford a doctor as opposed to a
Yes.
midwife.
Yes,
And,
that was a big piece of it. But the poor were the ones that went to the hospital in the late 1800s. You didn't go to the hospital if you had money because you would die from childbed fever. So it originally was something only the very poorest women did because they couldn't even afford to have a midwife come to their home.
Midwives were outlawed in certain states, weren't they? Or am I
No, you're
So
right. They
that-
still are in some states.
in some states you can't get this kind of care?
Right. Now,
Um,
nurse midwifery is legal, but lay midwifery, the direct entry midwives, are illegal in some states, which I find pretty abhorrent. I don't think it should be. It should be a decision that you make with your partner
Mhm.
based on your beliefs and what you value, and it shouldn't be mandated.
I volunteer on Thursdays down at my church, and I was out having a cigarette, and the minister's wife was driving by and stopped, and I said I was going to do this show, and she told me that she had had a friend who was having birth with a midwife, and she somehow got swept into this process, and that she was there, and somehow in this, she got advice from the midwife on midlife crisis. What am I talking?
Menopause.
I'm off in territory that's not my own.
Women.
Pre-menopause problems, and she said she got advice in just a few minutes from this midwife that her doctor had not given to her. She just had clarity on issues just like that,
Nice.
and made me realize that beyond the giving birth, that there is an element of maybe feminism isn't the word.
I think it works.
No, it works. Of women
Solidarity.
a solidarity of women caring for women, of women finding other women who are working with first-hand knowledge as opposed to a doctor for whom it is second-rate. Is there some truth in that? Am I?
Oh, I think so. I think I can establish a connection with my clients that I wouldn't otherwise be able to do. I mean, male physicians can be very sympathetic, and I've gone to male physicians before and had excellent care, and they can be compassionate and be right there with you. But there's something about a woman working with a woman that's different, and you can't make that up. You can't do anything if you don't have the same reproductive organs. How do you understand what they feel like when they're not working right? That's my bias.
No, I can understand thoroughly.
Mm-hmm.
Brad told me a story, and I can't believe it, but anyway, let's go with this.
I hate to think.
He told me that up until Louis XIV in France, or I might have my Louis wrong, that it was normal for women to give birth squatting, and that Louis wanted to see births. And the way to see births was to turn women up on their backs so that he could see them, and that's why we're still doing it that way? I mean, is there any truth to that? Can that be right?
I've heard the same thing. I think it's true. But you know, it's interesting that the women I work with birth in whatever position they want to be in. A lot of times they choose that position. They'll go to being on their back. Not flat, you know, certainly upright, but they'll find whatever position is comfortable.
Could I ask you share some anecdotes with us?
Birth anecdote?
Well, birth anecdotes, or, well, the one that we were talking about before the show, that when I was telling you my anecdote, you told me about a young lady.
Yeah, I think I've had this happen several times when I'm talking to somebody, and I especially like working with younger women who are, you know, late teens, early 20s, and maybe have never even had a GYN visit before, and they don't know what to expect. And so I find that really exciting to be a part of their learning about their body, and one of the things I do is extensive teaching. So they're with me for quite a while as we talk about whatever their needs are, and then when I do their exam, I use that as an opportunity to teach. And I have had women that have just been astounded that they've never been told how to do a breast exam. And these are maybe a woman who's been to several different doctors in the past or different providers, and they just haven't gotten that piece of how do you really take care of yourself. And my bias as an educator and also as a nurse is if you educate people, then they take on their own power to take care of their bodies. And I guess it's kind of sad to me that that piece gets left out so often.
I want to diverge here for a second because it's something just occurred to me.
Okay, good.
We have here in the state now the state's prison doctor is gay or bisexual. He has a wife and tons of kids, and he lives a rather strange life, but he kind of specializes in gay medicine. Or at least he goes around the state and he talks to gay groups, and astounding again, because he says things like, you know, well, you know, pro and con lubricant and this and that, things that, problems that only gay people have, or gay men have with sex, and things that they never knew. And I find this interesting that there's this, that people are in different areas of life are finding now that maybe it's best to work with people who have a first-hand experience with that.
Right.
Okay, more anecdotes.
Oh. I thought you had another question.
No. Get down to the nitty-gritty here.
Yeah. Anecdotes. Okay, well, let me think of some. You want birth anecdotes?
Twins?
I haven't
multiple
done twins
births?
yet.
No?
No, but I've had just some really remarkable births. Gosh, it's hard to come up with some right off the bat like this.
Well, you're not going to get to, because I just got a sign that said we've got about 5 minutes.
Oh.
And there is something major I want to talk to before we get you off to see your kid play football. Brant and I have been thinking younger about HIV prevention for younger people. And you
remember we mentioned.
You talked about what you were really, if you were going to be on the show, you talk about touching children, babies,
yes.
and the more I got to think about it is if you're going to reform society, you start even before they're born, and
Right.
that may, in that sense, we got about 5 minutes to talk
good.
on that.
I'm glad you brought it up. This is my new bandwagon.
All right, touching babies and a whole new way of society or
Right.
whatever.
Well, the thing that started, it's been cooking in here for a long time, but the thing that really got it going was the article in the paper a few weeks ago about, there's a program, a public health program that's called Back to Sleep. And the purpose of it is to encourage parents to keep their babies on their backs when they sleep because it reduces the risk of SIDS, the sudden infant death syndrome. So this article said that babies are getting flat heads on the back here, because they're on their backs all the time, and parents are all up in arms that their kids are getting flat heads, and what can we do differently? So
She's not making this up, folks.
no, this is real. So the first thing that I thought of as I read this article is it has nothing to do with babies sleeping on their backs. It has to do with the car seats that everybody is addicted to now. And these infant car seats, everywhere you go, babies are stuck in these things, and they're not being held close to their moms. They're not getting to listen to their parents' heartbeat as they lay on the chest. They're not getting that close feeling of touch. They're also not getting the kinesthetic piece that kids need to learn balance, to learn how to walk, to learn how to just hold their heads up when they're newborn. They need to be held. And as you walk around with your baby, you bend over to pick something up, they learn to right themselves. You turn and they grab on, and they learn all this. And so there's more than just holding your baby. You're teaching them all kinds of things through your body, and they're learning it. And to me, the most important thing you're teaching them is closeness and warmth and comfort, and they get the trust that they need so that they can explore their world. And I really think that by putting kids in these car seats all the time and not holding them, they're getting bounced around and they're not getting that human contact. I was at a talk just the other night, and it was about 2 hours that we were there, and this couple, very loving couple, you could tell they just loved their baby. They were attending to this child all the time, but the kid never left the car seat. And I thought, how sad, because the child was old enough to sit on a lap and could have been playing with something while mom or dad was holding them and just giving the love. When you're touching somebody, you're conveying so much. And I don't know what you're like. I'm a real toucher. So
I had to come to it. I wasn't originally.
Weren't you?
It was
I
early
most of all,
40s
yeah.
before all of a sudden it was okay to hug other people and to touch in a non-sexual way.
Yeah. So it's nice.
Yeah,
I
it is.
think.
It's very nice.
So think what it'd be like to be a baby. You've been inside growing for 9 months. Your whole existence has been touch, soft touch of the velvety lining inside and the warmth, and then you come out and you're all alone. I think it's kind of sad.
Yeah, it is kind of.
And in other countries, they don't do this. They think we're nuts. They see our strollers and our little carriers, and they think it's very strange that Americans are a weird culture. I think they've got something there.
I think they do too, and I think I've got something in with this thing of starting HIV prevention earlier, and I know we can't get grants to keep kids away from AIDS, but that everything is of a piece in society, and that if you tell people in a society that they're bad and they have to run away from their small towns and they emphasize sexuality and they are in these kind of rabbit warrens of concentrated sexuality, disease was inevitable. AIDS was, and
Good point.
and what we really need is for a whole society to be good, and we need to work on that, which is awfully hard.
But you start with that
but
trust.
we should start with kids and start early.
And
Trust.
self-esteem builds, and then the women that I work with, when they come in for their birth control teaching, want to use condoms to protect themselves because they care about themselves. So I think you're on the right track. Start young.
Okay, there's a sign that said, wrap it up.
Okay.
It says, been just delightful,
This
and
has
I'm
been
so glad you
fun.
came.
Thank you so
And-
much, Greg.
Yeah.